Hello everybody, I am Nu-Trix, and today we're going to talk about the latest Plugout from Roland for the Jupiter 4. Gotta be honest, never used the real Jupiter 4 before. I'm curious about the sound, how it works, what it does, what are the features of it, so we'll go through it together. Like any other Plugout, it exists part of a plugin into your computer, like a audio unit or VST plugin. It runs in a DAW. It does not exist as a standalone. And you need to have a DAW and the plugin to be able to export, to plug it out inside a System-8 that is a compatible plug-out machine, which is interesting. I have one, but what I believe is that I find it interesting that Roland is still releasing stuff as a plugin for the computer, of course, but also to support these hardware. So a lot of people were saying, you know, the ACB technology is old and will not be supported anymore. And you see that coming out and out and out. And to be honest, in the past, some of the plug outs that was released by Roland also came out as boutiques. So I don't know if they have any Jupiter 4 in up their sleeve somewhere, but the Jupiter 4 algorithm exists and is now available as a plug-out. Now, to understand how this works, first of all, you need to have it. It's part of the Roland Cloud Manager. To be able to get it, to download, to buy or rent, or just try, you need to have an account on the Roland Cloud Manager. The account is free. If you want to buy something, then you pay for it. The Roland Cloud Manager is basically just an online manager for everything that you can buy from Roland. So you go there, if you like it, you can try it out, you can buy it, you can also use what they call the membership to have access to all of their stuff. So when you have it, you download it. I mean, you basically go in the navigator and you find where it is and you just go download, install, and it's going to be installed on your computer as a plugin. So it will appear in your favorite DAW and you'll be able to run with it. But you need to have the firmware version 1.32 to be able to use it in the System-8. So let's actually do this really quickly. Basically, you go on the website of Roland, you go in support, you look for System-8, there's a firmware update, and then you can download the file. First of all, you need to verify that you don't have it already. So you go into the menu and you go version info, and it tells you I have version 1.31. So I need to update. In the menu, utility, and SD card format. Enter. Now go enter. Yes. The reason I'm doing this is I'm sure that it's going to be formatted in a format that the System-8 will support, and not just another format that I did from my computer, which might not be fully compatible. I think it's just a normal PC Windows formatting format, but to be sure, I do it with like this. So of course, I'm erasing everything on my SD card. You have two ways to update this. Either you use the SD card, you need to format the SD card and copy the file, which is System-8 up bin in the SD card at the first level, put it into your System-8, turn off the System-8, turn it on while holding the key trigger of the LFO, turn on while you hold this. It's going to be updating, it's going to be appearing, and it's going to load at the SD card and load. And then you need to wait. When say update finish, you turn the System-8 off, turn it back on, it's going to have the firmware update. That's with the SD card. Or you use a USB cable, turn it off, and you need to press key trigger while switching on the power. So key trigger in the LFO section. Turn it on. It says SD card USB update. Perfect. So I got this turned on. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go download the file. In your computer, you should see on the side something like this, you know, System-8. You click on your System-8 and you got something like this. Take the whole System-8 up bin and you drop it here. So you want to eject that. And now disconnect the USB cable at the back. It says detect USB, and it's updating. It says updating 1 of 6. Version info 1.32. I'm good. Okay, so what's interesting about this? First of all, before we go dive into the features, I just want to go about how to get that into the System-8. So you go into Plugout here. That's where you're going to send it. Now I say, well, it's not connected. It won't be able to send it. So if you want to be able to do that, you're going to go into settings here and say, well, I want to send the System-8 control input and MIDI control outputs, and also the System-8. That's it. So if now I go Plugout, it's going to say where you want to send it. Right away it sees it, because I already have this connected by USB. Jupiter 8, Juno 60. I'm going to put it into my Plugout 3. So I'm going to erase this one out of the memory and put the one I have here in it. So go. Yes, I'm ready to go with that. Another model will be, proceed. And it's sending the data and erasing the Plugout 3 memory. I thought that the system, the ERA system, the ACB technology was kind of gone, and now I see that they're still supporting it. So it would be cool to see other ACB technology devices. But I don't know. They're the only one who decides. So now it's there. So if I play here, well, it's the same sound. So let's actually dive into the synthesis of this to see how it compares to the other synthesizer that we saw before. I did a video about comparing every Plugout synth that was there, and to basically understand what they do and compare what they can do. In the end, how does it sound? Do you like the sound of it? But if you want to compare the Jupiter 4 to the other Jupiter or other synthesizer, it's a question of how does it work, you know? Sometimes it's difficult to see how does it work, because when you look at it, if you go back to this way of looking at it, this is the way the original synth looked like. So it's a mix between a Juno and a Jupiter 8, but it's not Jupiter 8, because if you look at it, you've got one LFO here. You've got the different shapes of the LFO, which is pretty good. The key trigger for the LFO, the range, the rate of the LFO, the delay time for the LFO. So everything that is something we expect. VCO, well, there's no two LFO. There's only one. You've got the VCO. You have a range for it, which is very wide. So you can. You have the LFO modulation, pulse width modulation. Well, the pulse width will only work if you have a pulse width. See, and there's a little graphic that helps you understand that when you move this, now it doesn't work. When you turn this one, now this one sends to this. Okay, so the LFO of the pulse width modulation only affects when you have a pulse width capable technology. In this case, the square wave that is a pulse width. And then you have this one, which is a saw plus a square wave. So the pulse width doesn't work on this because it's a square. But this one now is a pulse width modulated square. So you have two times where this link appears. So very graphic in that case, you know what you're doing. Also, if you move this, let's say LFO, and this is the different sources of modulation. And let's say you say LFO. Now the LFO can send pulse width modulation to on top of sending the pitch modulation. So that's it. And then you have a sub. And that's really where you can create something interesting, because it is basically a two oscillator synth. You have the sub, which is a square wave, which is not always the case in other synthesizers. Often the sub is a sine wave. In this case, the sub is a square wave. And you have the range for this oscillator on top. So if you take the sub and just use the sub really. So this is just the sub. Okay, so the sub itself has a nice round sound. If we verify that we have the whole, we open the filter completely, bring out the things. So now, if you look at it this way, what you're doing is that using the sub as the core, the fundamental sound, and then on top you're using the VCO, the other one, the oscillator that is here that has different shapes. You use that one as the harmonics on top, the richness of the sound. So keep in mind that if I'm saying 16 for the VCO, and the sub is 1 octave lower, so it's going to be 32. So it's always an octave lower. So when you use the sub, think of this one as the harmonics on top of the sub. That's really how you should look at it. So, very different in the VCO section compared to, let's say, a Jupiter 8. So it's not just having a Jupiter 4 that has more notes and it becomes an 8. No, the sync, there's no ring, there's no cross modulation, and there's one very simple sub oscillator. I mean, you don't have any control outside of bringing the volume up. The other one can be shaped or selected or modified. So this combination makes it to a more, not a simpler sound, because it's still going to be rich, but more, I would say, a more raw sound in a way. Because you can have really like these cool. Then you have the filter, and you have a noise also. Then in the other section, you got the VCF. So you got an envelope for the VCF and attack, decay, sustain, release, the amount of envelope you want to use, or LFO you want to use to control the cutoff point, the key follow you want to use to move the cutoff point. You've got the cutoff. So we're going to... And keep in mind that on top of all of this, you always have the arpeggiator here. So and you have also an high pass cutoff filter, so you can cut the low frequency. Prefer to go open to the bottom so you hear. Then the VCA, same thing. Attack, decay, sustain, release. Tone is something else. The LFO modulation will create more of a tremolo, if you want here. Velocity sensitive is how, as you press louder, it's going to be louder, and softer, it's going to be softer. Well, that does not represent the original synthesizer because there was no velocity on this when it came out. But it would be stupid not to offer you that today. So it's there. So if you don't want to use it, don't. But if you want to control that, you have that also. You have the tone, which is basically you're kind of boosting the bass or boosting the high frequencies. And we got the volume, the whole thing. On top of that, you've got a little thing that is called condition at the top, which is for everything that is ACB technology based, so every plug out. And this is how old your synthesizer would be, so it will change kind of the reaction, a little bit of a randomness, or they calculate every part of the circuit, how it could break down or work weirdly or differently if your machine would be 20 years old, 5 years old, 10 years old. So it will affect the sound and the stability of it and gives you more of an analogish result. You have the tuning here, and you have a circuit mod here. So this is interesting because on the Jupiter 4, there was some way to have some modification to your sound. And you see, if I turn it off, here's some movement in it. It's actually detuning many versions of it. So it's interesting to have that sound. Now there's also the bend range, the portamento type, the legato mode. So these are just classic stuff. Now, if you want to remember, hey, I don't remember how this works, you go into help and you're going to get a PDF. The PDF is going to be very clear on what every knob does. Example, you go, okay, what's actually the assign mode here, unison, poly mode, how does it work? So you go here and you go look for assign mode, and I'm going to say, well, sound mode, unison 1 is the lowest note that you pressed is played with 4 voices. The unison 2 can play according to how many keys you press. So if you press 1 key, you're going to have 2 voice playing. If you press 2 key, 2 voice are in unison, and 3 keys, they play as poly. So like this one here, poly 2, 1 voice plays per key. Poly 1, it's 1 voice pressed per key. So there's different ways of playing this and reacting. So this is a 4-voice synthesizer, and it can be stacked together in unison, or poly to play more, or poly 2, which you have basically 2 voices on one note and 2 voices on the other one. So this is pretty clear. If you don't remember that, you go click on help, you get all the information. And the last section would be basically the arpeggiator you can play with, but also this section, which is the effects, the delay, the reverb. There's a lot of cool sounding stuff here. Click here, you have access to different types. You've got overdrive, distortion, metal, fuzz, ensemble, phaser. So you can, and they're in series. So you go through the distortion first, then through the delay or flanging, chorus, depending on what you want. And the last one is mostly reverb, the last one. And for each of them, you can tone some of it, time, and volume of it. So basically this, if you have a System-8, you know, because at the end of the System-8 structure, you also have the same logic available. So this is pretty cool. Now, if you want to look at the patch windows, you have all the information here. I can go into the other presets. You've got these here. You click on this one. Let's try some sounds. there's always this way, first of all, to go and look at System-8 layout. So you see this graphic and you compare it to the other to see how it does and what it does. And you see in every section that there's a difference in the option that you have in the Jupiter 4. For example, there's no VCO2. It's not here. That's where you see it. In the mixer, you can control the sub, the noise, but you don't control the volume of the VCO1. And this control usually is for the pitch envelope. You don't have one. So you see right away the limits if you compare this to the other synthesizer and the Jupiter and in the System-8 layout. It's a great way to compare them because you see right away the differences. If you want to use the System-8 to control this, you go into the option, set MIDI control mapping for System-8. So then you can use the System-8 to control the whole panel. Also, something interesting, if you find that it used too much CPU usage, you can select a lower algorithm, a less demanding algorithm, or you can also lower the voices. And something that is weird in a way is that you can have an 8-voice Jupiter 4. I'm going to have it linger a little bit in my System-8 for a while. I like the notion of the circuit mod. This thing is interesting because it gives something different to the sound that I think the other synth has. So this is one of the part that this is unique, and the fact that you have a sub and the VCO, and the sub is a square. It has its own sound. So I'm going to play more with it, and I'll be back with more information about that later on if you ask for it. So that's it. That's it for today. I hope it's actually useful to understand what the Jupiter 4 Plugout can do and how to use it with the System-8. Any question, put them below, and I'll see if I can answer them in a later video. That's it. See you soon. Have fun. Play more music. And this summer is crazy for me because I'm doing a huge renovation project on the house. So I'm going to be a bit slower in making videos or answering your question, but I'm going to stay there.